Metlife Stadium.
We got to roll out.
That proceeds benefit
Get it.
the
Get
Giants
it.
Foundation.
Oh, no. No, he
5K.
didn't. Oh, my gosh.
Flashing the wheels as he did with the Tennessee Volunteers.
Yeah, he took on a linebacker, and the linebacker is still down.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is. You know, when he was in college.
It was a rainy, sloppy night in Metlife Stadium, and the Lions were unable to find the end zone in their loss to the New York Giants 14-3. But there was plenty of positives to pull out of week 1 of the preseason, so let's go through the news, notes, and highlights of the first preseason game for the Detroit Lions. Let's go. So the Detroit Lions do lose their first preseason game to the New York Giants 14-3. But as you know, you have to take every preseason game with a grain of salt. The Lions organization now comes into the preseason with a different attitude, a different culture, and rather than needing to win preseason games to build momentum into a regular season, I think now the preseason is more about building the ultimate roster, ironing out the small details, making sure you're getting the right players that fit the scheme that's going to work for you long term. Obviously, Ben Johnson, the offense, is going to be very vanilla in the preseason, and you're really just looking to ultimately test guys and build your 53-man roster as you head towards week 1. Before getting in the game, just a couple news and notes. I think the new uniforms looked really cool. I do a very detailed video on the details of these new uniforms for the Detroit Lions for 2024. Go take a look at that. But I thought they looked really sharp there at Metlife Stadium. I'm not a huge fan of the blue pants, and I talk about that over and over again. So I'd like to see them with the whites, but I just thought it was a really clean and concise look, and I definitely like it going into the season. Got our first feel for Golden Tate as a preseason announcer for the Detroit Lions broadcast. I kind of switched between those two guys there on Fox Detroit, and then I went over to the radio broadcast where Dan Miller and TJ Lang did the first half on the radio call. So just good to hear the voices, good to get back into the swing of NFL football. Yes, it was preseason. It was a horrible day as far as weather in New York. So unfortunately for both teams, it was very sloppy. I think offenses on both sides truly struggled to gain any momentum throughout the game. So let's go through kind of quarter by quarter some of the highlights and what we saw there throughout this preseason game. So highlights and notes from the first quarter: Isaac Ukwu with a sack, as well as Brandon Joseph with his first interception of the preseason. It's kind of a forced pass, I thought, in that case, but he stepped in front of it and really made a good play there. Jake Bates hit his first and only field goal attempt here in the game, a 53-yarder, and due to the conditions, I think it's a really good start. We've talked about his inconsistency, and I really thought he had to be lights out in these preseason games. Well, he's off to a really good start with that 53-yard field goal. Unfortunately, he followed that up with a penalty on the next kickoff, unable to put it in the landing zone, which you now know is a penalty. That starts the Giants at the 40-yard line. Overall, again, both offenses really struggled to get off the ground in the rainy conditions there at MetLife, so it was kind of slow. Defenses were really in charge there in the first quarter. Drew Lock, the quarterback for the Giants who started the game for them, was actually knocked out in the first quarter, bringing in fan favorite Tommy DeVito, who finished the game for the Giants there. For the Lions on defense, I thought Broderick Martin and Nate Lynn looked pretty good. They combined for a sack. Broderick Martin is such an imposing presence. He's so large in that number 99. He's hard to miss. And he seemed to force his way into the backfield on a few plays there. I thought that's a good sign. And then I thought the secondary looked really good in the first quarter. They allowed the rookies to play, Terrion Arnold, Enos Rakestraw. You saw Meek Robertson out there. So you got kind of 3/4 of what may be your starting secondary. And I thought they looked really good against the second-team Giants offense. So again, you got to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt, but it is those guys, at least for Terrion and for Rakestraw, their first true NFL game experience, and I thought they held up well. Rakestraw especially, I thought, made some good plays. He was in the tackle game, and he was involved in some pass breakups as well. And obviously, they didn't really go towards Terrion Arnold. So I thought, again, off to a good start and saw limited time for the rookies in the first quarter. Moving on to the second quarter, I thought the Lions continued their sharp defense. They looked good tackling up to that point. Just seemed to wrap up well, and the linebackers looked really good. I thought the Lions tried to force the ball into Darius Fountain in the second quarter early on. I think there were 3 different passes there. They tried to get him the ball and just were not successful. And most of those plays I thought were because of the Giants' secondary. I really think either Darius wasn't able to separate himself or the cornerback made a play that prevented a completion there. Giants ended up getting on the board there with the first touchdown of the day, a 48-yard touchdown run by Eric Gray. I thought the defense kind of got bottled up on the outside of the defensive line, which allowed him to sort of bounce off and then scurry up the right side of the field there for a 48-yard score. He made a nice cut. I think it was, I didn't see who the player was. It was either a Lions linebacker or a secondary player. He really cut back on them. And again, due to the conditions, that player sort of slipped and fell. He was able to make a miss and then scampered in the end zone, making the score 7-3 at that time. We got to get our first look at the virtual measurement system, that laser system with the video feed of the football and where the line is. It was what I got from it was very tennis-like. You know how they do the replays in tennis, where they show the flash to where the ball hit sort of thing? I got like the same vibe there. And I could see that being the norm down the road. Right now it's in a trial phase at Metlife Stadium, and it was kind of cool to see. Lions were stuffed on fourth down on a QB sneak, and we'll talk about more and more of that, their inconsistency on fourth down throughout this game. Sione Vaki saw some time at running back, and I thought he flashed a little bit here and there. He had a really nice run in the second quarter. I think it was 17-yard run, 18-yard run, something like that, where he had a nice cutback, just looked dynamic in a few plays there, and that's sort of what you like to see out of a rookie in the first game of the preseason. On that same drive, the Lions turned the ball over. I think it was a Nate Sudfeld interception. It was kind of a long run back swinging all the way to the other side of the field. Well, Coyote Owasika, one of the backup offensive linemen, tracks the interception player down and forces a fumble, and guess who recovers it? Sione Vaki, giving the Lions the ball back there late in the second quarter. I just thought that was a really cool hustle play by one of their backup offensive linemen. We know Coyote Owasika put in a lot of good time at the end of 2023 and even into the NFC Championship game, and just making a huge hustle play there in the second quarter I thought was really cool. In that drive, after getting the ball back, Antoine Green suffered what looked to be somewhat of a head injury. I don't think he returned to the game. He was trying, I think, to make sort of a cutback block on one of their secondary players who was clearly ready for it because he gave him the shoulder as he's hitting the block and destroyed Antoine Green, who I don't know if, I wouldn't say he was knocked out, but he clearly was dazed and confused there for a second. They had to bring the trainers out and walk him off the field. He was able to walk off under his own power, so I don't expect that to be anything serious. Let's get a weird news and note from halftime. Okay, now I'm from Michigan originally, so I'm obviously the biggest Lions fan I could possibly be. But I moved to New York, so I don't get a lot of the local commercials from Detroit unless I'm watching some of these preseason feeds. And one of the commercials that comes on was for Gardner White, obviously the furniture sales. And you guys got to take advantage. I'm assuming most people watching me are from the Detroit area mostly and know what Gardner White is. You got to get in there, right? It's from July 15th to August 14th or something like that. Don't quote me on the dates, but if you go in there and buy furniture, you'll get a full rebate on the price of the furniture if the Lions win the Super Bowl. So go buy yourself a couch, get a bed, because they're going all the way this year, so take advantage of that. Now moving into the second half, we have to start with an unfortunate injury. David Bada, the D tackle, looked like he suffered a non-contact right leg injury. He was able to sort of be helped off the field, but that one looked a little bit more serious, and we'll have to keep our ears open, and I'll keep you posted on the update for that. Isaac Ukwu again flashed after the sack in the first quarter. He made another, I thought, great tackle on a defensive end play, and we have not talked about Isaac Ukwu enough. Honestly, I don't think I've even mentioned that guy's name on any of the previous training camp videos. So on one of these upcoming videos, I will do more of a deep dive into him because I thought he played really well. And then we know the Lions need help on the other end of Hutch. So for him to flash, I thought was a really good thing. And I think the biggest story from the third quarter is Hendon Hooker. He finally got his first game action since leaving Tennessee, first true game action. So that was really good to see. And I thought Hendon Hooker was really good today. Now, we all know he left with an unknown injury. He came out of the game at the end of the third quarter. Or actually, I don't know if he actually came out of the game, but they showed him leaving the game with some trainers, walking on his own power. So we'll have to see what that is all about. We'll hope it's nothing serious. But going back to the game, I thought Hendon Hooker played fantastic for his first game action in forever. And knowing what we know coming out of training camp so far, that Nate Sudfeld was the true number 2 to this point, and that Hendon needed more time and had to prove himself in these preseason games. Well, I think he took the first step here today. He had control. He looked like he had confidence. He made the right decisions as far as when to tuck and run with the football. He didn't force a pass anywhere. And when he did throw the ball, it seemed to be well-placed footballs. Even the miss to Donovan Peoples-Jones in the end zone there, I thought was a good pass. DPJ was able to get his hands on the ball, but wasn't able to secure that one. So I think Hooker earns his stripes, not only with the plow of the secondary player, that was Giants safety Jervarius Owens on a 16-yard scramble run that we saw to open the video here. That's just a really cool play from Hendon Hooker. A toughness play, kind of a prove yourself to the rest of the team. I'm sure Dan Campbell will have a lot of fun with that. But I just thought Hooker looked very comfortable in his first action. And to me, comparing him to Nate Sudfeld, he definitely looked more like the number 2 quarterback. So again, we'll have to see kind of what that injury is all about, and hopefully nothing that will drag into any more of this preseason. So let's move into the fourth quarter. And again, this is without Hendon Hooker. Sudfeld replaces him. But let's start with the defense and the linebacking crew for the Lions. I thought guys like Malik Jefferson, the free agent they picked up from Dallas, and then Deron Gilbert both showed flash plays, great tackles. Jalen Reeves-Maven, of course, continued to show kind of consistency he's had over the last several seasons. So the depth linebackers I thought were really good here in preseason game 1. We finally had our first Donovan Peoples-Jones sighting. We talked about the miss in the end zone. Well, he had a great kind of catch, strong hands, and carried a secondary defender with him for a few yards down the field. And I think we need to see more of that out of him. If he's going to really compete for the wide receiver 3 role, he's going to need to flash some more plays. So I think between DPJ, Darius Fountain, and then Isaiah Williams, who had several catches today, I think he had 4 or 5 catches today, I thought he was really good. Good hands, showed some speed, and again, put himself now in a position where he can now show up for wide receiver 3. We had another unfortunate injury. This one to Connor Galvin, the backup offensive tackle, was rolled up on an unknown leg injury, but had to be carted off the field, and that is so unfortunate in a preseason game. We know the depth to the offensive line will be so important. It's just tough to make it through a whole season without thinking some of those guys are going to be needed, and if Connor Galvin is out for an extended period of time, that's going to be tough. So Giovanni Manu, of course, comes in, sort of replaces him, and unfortunately he had a key false start on a 3rd down that took them kind of almost out of a drive. They ended up getting the first down, but it was just a tough false start penalty, and the Lions in general were pretty clean all day, but that was one that certainly flashed in my mind because they were finally driving, got a little bit momentum in that fourth quarter, and that was a tough false start against him. So just, kind of a young learning thing. You saw Dan Campbell shaking his head on the sideline, so they know, and they'll teach him up on that and hopefully learn from it. Lions just couldn't convert on 4th down. They ended the game, again, their final offensive drive, ending unable to convert on 4th down. They were 0 for 4, I think, on 4th downs, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So the Lions do end up losing this game 14-3. Some good, some bad, some minor injuries we're going to have to follow up on. Obviously, the Hendon Hooker thing is going to have to really be dived into. I'm really hoping it's nothing serious because I thought maybe the biggest news coming out of this, besides them just losing the game, was Hendon Hooker looking strong in that backup role, and as long as he's healthy, I really think he took a step up here in this first preseason game. So for my upcoming regular season reviews, we'll spend much more time diving into things like team stats, the box score stuff, things that will matter more in the regular season when we have starters actually playing. Right now, some of these stats can be misleading in a sense because, again, the Lions are working towards the regular season now. But I think, again, some of the things that call out to me in looking at this, total plays, I thought the Lions controlled the football in the second half versus the Giants controlling the ball in the first half. So that was kind of nice to see. I thought the defense started to play much better in the second half as well. So that was really good to see. Lions passing game as well as the New York Giants passing game, just not much to write home about. I think the sloppy conditions really contributed to not being able to throw the ball as effectively as I think both teams would have liked to. There were only a handful, maybe less, deep ball attempts in this entire game, so stretching the field just was not an option. So that certainly limited a lot of things there. And then the other thing was, I think, the Lions being 0 for 4 on 4th downs, the 4th down efficiency. Now, we know the Lions and Dan Campbell love to be aggressive, and of course in this preseason they're not going to hold anything back. They're trying to work on things and test guys, so going for it even takes on another meaning, but they're going to want to see more efficiency in those late downs, especially on 4th down as well. The rest of the stats, again, we won't beat up to death because, again, this is the preseason, and we of course have to kind of look at it with the right eye. And not much of a scoring summary. We talked about the Eric Gray long 48-yard run. I don't even think I mentioned the 1-yard TD run he had there in the second quarter as well, putting them up 14-3 at the time. And then Jake Bates, of course, led off the scoring with his 53-yard field goal, which, again, I think is super positive for him to start off this preseason with that hit. So hopefully that will carry through the preseason, and I think everyone wants him to win that job. So hopefully that will remain consistent, and we'll see that moving forward. But again, not much scoring to talk about here in these rainy conditions at MetLife. So again, the Lions doing it, falling to the Giants 14-3. Again, we won't go crazy deep dive tonight on a preseason game, but a few players I want to call out as far as their stats. Hendon Hooker ended up finishing 5 of 9 for 36 yards, no scores. Nate Sudfeld, 13 out of 24 for 96 yards, did have the interception. On the other end, I thought Drew Lock just didn't look good even prior to the injury. Tommy DeVito comes in, goes 8 of 15, 92 yards, no scores. Hendon Hooker actually led the Lions in rushing, 4 carries for 34 yards, and we saw the dominant run there. And there's the dynamic that he brings that no other Lions quarterback has. And if that is something that the Lions can cultivate to the point where maybe they even work it into some of their offensive schemes, that may be valuable in more ways than him just being a backup. So let's see what happens down the road. Sione Vaki as well, 4 carries, 29 yards, and a long of 15, averaging 7.3, only on 4 carries. So we'll have to see how that extrapolates, good word there, throughout the rest of the preseason. And again, I thought he looked really good. Tackling, again, I thought the Lions' defense, tackling-wise, looked really good. We talked about Malik Jefferson, 6 total tackles today. That's pretty good for preseason day 1. Deron Gilbert, again, Broderick Martin, Mitchell Agood, who we haven't spent a ton of time on, but again, there's another defensive end, defensive lineman that if you could get something out of, that would be great to build some depth behind Aiden Hutchinson and Marcus Davenport. So, again, I didn't think the defense was terrible. Yes, they gave up 14 points in the first half. The running game kind of got to them a little bit from the Giants, I think, but it was just nothing that I'm overly concerned with. And again, it's a preseason game. None of the starters played, so you kind of have to take it for what it is, and we'll move forward here into preseason week 2. So what did you guys think of preseason week 1 against the Giants? Let me know down in the comments. Who stepped up? Who stepped out? What are we thinking as we head towards preseason week 2? A lot to look ahead for. Should be an interesting week. The Lions pick back up with training camp on Sunday the 11th, I believe, and then continue through the week. So we'll come back with some more videos as we head into what will be week 4 of training camp here for the Detroit Lions. Appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. We'll do review videos like this after every Lions game, not only in the preseason, but of course all of the regular season games. We'll also mix in some live video reactions as well. So definitely come back and see me. If you dig the vibe here at Johnny Guest Sports, definitely hit that like button. We're going for 100 likes on this particular video. If you hit the subscription button and the notify bell, it's the best way to make sure you don't miss any future videos here on the channel. I have a membership option available. If you hit the join button on any one of my videos, I'll walk you through all the options you have to become a part of the family. More than anything else, make sure to take care of yourself and your mental health. That's more important than anything. I want to make sure you come back and see me on my future videos. Thank you guys so much for your time. Go Lions. Have a fantastic day.